Hey, welcome. Here are 5 mistakes that everyone, and by everyone I mean myself, here are 5 mistakes that we often make when trying to achieve a filmic color grade. Cinematic footage, filmic color grades, they've unfortunately become buzzwords in the industry, but buzzwords that are ultimately trying to communicate or convey a certain style or aesthetic that we're trying to achieve with our footage or with our final edits. On the road to achieving that filmic color grade that I mentioned here in the intro, I think it's going to be important to qualify what that means, to set left and right limits as to what it means to be a filmic color grade. To put it as simply as I can, we're looking to pull inspiration from some of our favorite films. That is kind of the benchmark for top-notch production quality. And we want to create the best films that we can, so why not? Why not pull some inspiration from them? And much of that look is derived from the different film stocks that our favorite films were shot on growing up, and there's still a laundry list of films today that are shot on film because of the characteristics that you get that you just can't get digitally. We want to maybe tug on those nostalgic strings or take advantage of the organic process over the digital one that comes with modern technology, modern cameras. There's a whole list of reasons that we choose to shoot digitally today, and cost is probably at the top of that list, but that doesn't mean that we can't still pull inspiration from some of our favorite film stocks to best replicate that. And that could mean anything from contrast ratios all the way up to color density and everything in between. And that is the intention of a filmic color grade to me. We're taking that footage that we have and we're going to try to give it some of that film characteristic. Now, it's worth noting that there are plenty of things that happen in pre-production, in production, that really lend to that cinematic quality that we're after. That is for another video. It's very important. We don't want to discredit that at all, but for the sake of today, we're just going to look at the color grading aspect of it, more specifically, where we might go wrong in doing so. All right, first mistake. Skipping pre-post-production. I obviously just made that up. What I'm alluding to here, though, is we need to do a little bit of research before we start spinning wheels and drawing S-curves, right? We need to do some research to better inform the type of filmic grade that we're trying to achieve. An unaimed arrow never misses. I'm gonna let that sink in for a second. An unaimed arrow never misses. If we don't have something that we're trying to target, we're certainly going to miss the mark because there is no mark. So I'm going to encourage you to start doing some research, start pulling some reference images. Maybe they're from some of your favorite movies. You could do a Google search. Once you have that collection of images, begin to assess the collection as a whole and begin to draw some connections as to what some common traits might be. Take a look at the exposure values, look at the contrast ratios, look at the color palettes that you're naturally drawn to. Save those images in a way that you can access them again, because we're going to talk about them in a later step. I like to use Shot Deck. It's a great resource for filmmakers to draw inspiration for purposes such as this. If you really want to nerd out on pre-post production, go to shotonwhat.com. You can type in one of your favorite movies and see what film stock it was shot on, and then you can do a deep dive into the characteristics of that film. If you're the type of colorist to do that, let me know down in the comments below, because we just became best friends. That'll bring us to mistake number 2, working too hard. Now, I'm gonna paraphrase an incredible colorist, Colin Kelly here. We want to work macro over micro and simple over complex. Now, we're gonna unpack that just a little bit here in this point. A real colorist, a good colorist, knows how to embrace nuance. They can craft an image that is felt and not necessarily seen. A good colorist is invisible, and they get out of the way so that way the viewer can fully immerse themselves in the story being told. By working macro over micro, or globally over more precise complex adjustments, we're able to leave less of a trace behind that we've had our hand on the image as a colorist. So the most macro adjustment that we can make as colorists is to our timeline. That's where we want to get into our look development for the piece that we're working on, and we're going to touch more on that later on in the video. Working our way down from there, then we begin to make more localized adjustments to each individual clip. But we still want to affect each clip as a whole first. These types of global adjustments, to make a blanket statement, should do 90% of the heavy lifting, getting us closer to our final image. And then, only then, should we go back through for another pass and make some of those more fine-tuned micro adjustments, the secondary adjustments, things like keys and qualifiers. Working in this manner also helps us to keep things simple over more complex, because these global adjustments are going to be more repeatable. They're going to apply to more shots in a sequence, helping with our consistency. And then it keeps us away from some of the complexities that come with pulling a clean key or tracking a good mask. Mistake number 3, working too hard. Apparently, I'm a lazy colorist. The purpose of this point is to take a break. You deserve it, but also because you actually need it. Our eyes have this incredible ability to adjust to the environment that we're in. If you don't believe me, walk from inside to outside on a bright sunny day, and after a couple seconds, your eyes are going to adjust for that exposure change. It's really incredible technology we have in our eyes, right? But that same adjustment can also, from a colorist perspective, cause a little bit of issue. Our eyes have a tendency to play some tricks on us as we sit in a project, or even worse, we sit on a single frame. For example, if you're looking at a frame that has a strong green cast to it, the longer you look at that image, the more your eye is going to adjust for that green cast, and it's going to appear more neutral. So, to combat this, take a break. Walk outside, get some fresh air, get some steps in, and also begin to remind your eyes what colors actually look like. Mistake number 4 is not using reference images. This is where that pre-post-production work from point 1 comes full circle. As we just talked about, our eyes have this tendency to adjust to our images. So this is a really incredible way to reorient or recalibrate our eyes to the direction that we wanted to go at the outset of this project. I cannot encourage you enough to periodically pull up a still from your reference library and look at it side by side next to your image. Now, we're not trying to directly copy the grade that somebody else has done, but it helps us make sure we're going in the right direction, or it'll give you a pretty obvious tell if you are going in the wrong direction with your grade, which is very easy to do as you sit in that project without recalibrating towards something like a reference image. The way that I've been doing this that has started to work out really well for me looks something like this. As I go through that pre-post-production work that I've been doing in my own client work, I start to collect some images from some of my favorite movies. This could be a movie that I just watched recently. Maybe I'm in shot deck just looking for some inspiration, right? Something that draws me. I take that collection of images, then I upload it to a Power Grades folder within Resolve. Now, this isn't traditionally what Power Grades are for, but this way I always have this ongoing collection, this ongoing library of reference images that I really like that come from some of my favorite movies. And at any given point, any project that I'm in, I can quickly go back, reference those, and recalibrate. All right, mistake number 5. This one is why we're here today. Mistake number 5 is confusing color grading with look development. Now, the two of these are very similar jobs. They go hand in hand and they have the same end goal, but they have very distinctly different parts to play in achieving that goal. Now, look developers or color scientists are working meticulously to craft oftentimes a LUT or a plugin or maybe a power grade, if you will, craft some type of overall look, macro look that can be applied to the project as a whole, maybe a specific scene that will work with multiple images. And I'm not a look designer or color scientist, so I'm speaking from a pretty weak position as to what it is they do exactly, but I'm a colorist, right? And the job of a colorist is a little bit different. Now, a colorist is going to take the source material, the footage from the project, and extrapolate all the information that they can and best prepare that footage to work with that look, okay? And both of these two roles have to come together to give us the ideal final image. So I want you to know that as a colorist, there is no shame in leveraging the work that some of these look designers and color scientists are doing, using their LUTs, their power grades, their plugins. That does not make you less of a colorist. You're just utilizing the tools that somebody has very meticulously crafted for you to use. The caveat here is making sure that you're using reputable and reliable LUTs, power grades, or plugins. It is so important to do your due diligence when it comes to researching the LUT or plugin that you're going to be using to make sure that it will safely shepherd your image from oftentimes its raw or log state into the final output, the Rec 709, Rec 2020, whatever you're finishing in. One of the companies that I know does this really well. They've dedicated their entire mission to helping us get a truly filmic look, one that actually maps our footage to film stocks that we all know and love is Dehancer Pro. So let's take a look at what Dehancer Pro has to offer. Dehancer Pro is this film-inspired look development plugin suite. They've taken the complexity of look development, paired it with years of studying analog film characteristics, and then distilled that into a streamlined set of tools for a complete and customizable look. Alright, so here's how I set up my projects that use Dehancer Pro. I haven't been using Resolve's color management as much lately because it doesn't play super well with my motion graphics for Motion VFX, so I've been setting up a manual color space transformation pipeline. Dehancer supports the Davinci wide gamut color space, which is my preferred color space, so we'll set up our node graph accordingly. At the clip level, I'll build out a simple node graph that begins with a color space transform. Here I'm going from C-Log 2 into Davinci wide gamut. Then I'll leave 3 nodes after for shot level color correction prior to my look development nodes. 1 for exposure, 1 for contrast, and the final for color balancing. I'll ripple that node graph across all of the clips in my timeline, then I will select them all, right-click, and add them to their own group. I'll label that group Look Dev. And then I'll navigate to the new node window. The first node I'll put in this new node window will be labeled for the Dehancer plugin, and the final node will be for the CST that'll take us from Davinci wide gamut into our final output. In my case, that's going to be Rec 709. What is so incredibly useful about the Dehancer plugin is that it will return whatever supported color space it's fed, so we're never left guessing as to what's happening with our footage like some of the LUTs on the market. At this point, all we've done is convert our footage from its log state into its output state. Now that we're looking at a more normalized image, let's take one pass through all of our footage at the clip level to make any necessary adjustments to get a neutral image, adjusting exposure, contrast, and white balance as needed. Then we're going back into our group post-clip window, and we're going to add the Dehancer plugin to our labeled node. Dehancer will then display a handful of default adjustments to our image. Truthfully, I'd rather see everything left off so that we can decide what to turn on and enable as we go, but it's not the end of the world. I just like to start by turning off the grain so it isn't so processor intensive. Following our macro over micro principle from earlier, let's start by deciding what film stock we want to emulate. Now, Dehancer has a multitude of great film profiles, Kodak Vision3 being a very popular choice for motion imagery, so I'll select Kodak Vision3 50D for this footage. The next global choice we need to make is the print stock itself. This replicates the optical printing process of various film types. Here you might recognize in the drop-down window the Kodak 2383. This is a very popular choice and is an inspiration for many looks out there, so I'll choose that one. As you can see, we've really brought our footage a long way and introduced some really interesting character to our image. If you want to push it even a bit further, let's dive back into the grain tab. I find the default to be quite strong for my taste. I often find myself dialing the controls down just about as far as they'll go to get my desired level of grain, because remember, we're trying to be felt and not necessarily seen. I don't want to be too heavy-handed with the grain here. Halation and bloom are a great place to explore too. Halation will add a filmic characteristic that takes the shape of a red glow around your highlights. This would have come from light that bounced back and hit the rear of the film, exposing the red layer on an actual film camera. So this is a really cool emulation to get that film look, right? Bloom is also a really interesting option because bloom creates a great roll-off that extends from the highlight centers. Film has always handled highlights better than many digital cameras have, and this is a really neat effect to help us better recreate that feeling. We're not going into everything that Dehancer has to offer in this video because you could spend some serious time in this plugin. I just wanted you to be aware of this incredible tool from a very highly reputable source that you can leverage as a colorist to help you with your look design. There's a link down in the description to check it out for yourself. You can even use code MARIS for a 10% discount. There you have it. I appreciate you spending some time with me today. If you have any questions for me, you know you can find me down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. See you in the next vid. Happy shooting. and go back to work now.